What's up, Mortgage Coach community? Dave Savage coming to you live with Allan Langer. What's up, Allan?
David, how are you, man? Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, man. So just to give you, you may know some of this backstory because I reached out to you and said, hey, I loved your Donald Miller interview.
Yeah.
But it was shared in our Facebook by Shayla Gifford. Do you happen to know the name Shayla Gifford?
I do not, but thank her for sharing it.
Yeah, so she shared it in the Mortgage Coach Facebook group on a Sunday, which I don't, Shayla doesn't share often, and I was really surprised to see it on a Sunday. But if there was a Hall of Fame in the mortgage industry, like Shayla Gifford would be in it. She's a very successful top producing loan officer who became a very successful team leader, who coaches a lot of people in the mortgage industry, and runs a very big mortgage platform for Guild, which is a good client of ours. So the fact that Shayla is like, hey, Mortgage Coach, can you check this out? It was just like, what's that?
Oh, wow.
And I listened to that podcast. I don't remember if I listened to it on Sunday or Monday, but I was just like loving every minute of it. So it's great to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, that was one of the more fun podcasts I did with Donald Miller, obviously, because he's a big deal. And I went out to Nashville and I got certified as a story brand guide. And people ask me, how'd you get Donald, how did you get on Donald Miller's podcast? And I tell people, well, I just asked. People are like, how'd you do this? How'd you get that? I just asked. I went up to him and we just started chatting and talked about my pricing philosophies. Like, I got to have you in my podcast. So he's the one who actually recommended. I didn't, lead with the podcast. So that's how I got on there. So a lot of fun.
Well, guys, there's a takeaway right there, guys. Everybody, if you're a new loan officer, half the battle is asking at the right time in the right way. Yep. So I think that's takeaway number one from today's call. So now, in full disclosure, I have not read your book yet. Okay. I did buy it as a result of that podcast, and I have listened to that podcast a couple times. I've journaled on it. There were things that you said that I thought were super on point for the mortgage industry. And really my goal is, one, that this half hour we spend together is really valuable, but I would love to see other leaders in the mortgage industry buy your book, read your book, and I'd love to see you on a lot of stages in the mortgage business. Do you speak? Do you do public speaking?
Yeah, actually that was my whole, I don't want to call it a business model, but after my book, I got quite a few offers to do speaking, started off small. And then prior to COVID, I had in March of this past year, I had 8 speaking engagements scheduled and 7 of them were paid. And I would walk away from my speaking engagements with quite a few opportunities for sales training from those speaking engagements. So that's kind of how my business was taking off. And then boom, overnight, no more speaking engagements, no more client pipeline, everything disappeared. So had to reinvent myself a little bit over the year but I've probably done in 2020, I probably did at least 60, maybe 70 podcasts, webinars, seminars, speaking, training, all of it. So yeah. So to answer your question, yes, I'm very comfortable speaking.
All right. So Mortgage Coach community, again, I'm going to be reading this book between now and hopefully I get to interview you again, Allan, and we can unpack even more things. But just what I heard on that podcast, remember everybody in the Mortgage Coach community, I have interviewed Donald Miller. I'll put a link down below to it. I also wrote a LinkedIn article after it because I thought it was so important for mortgage professionals, like that central message be the guide. I just believe philosophically, but let's unpack some of the principles that I think are super on point for mortgage professionals that came up in that call. If you don't mind, like, talk to them about options, because that's one of those things where I believe at Mortgage Coach on a mission level that when a family gets into mortgage debt, the biggest debt they'll ever get into, they're going to be better off if they get options. And I also believe from a what's best for the consumer, if they help author the strategy and the plan, like, hey, I got options, and they're picking it, like it's good for the consumer. And then I also believe, it's also really good science of selling to do that. So why don't you share your perspective, and if you want to repeat what you said in the podcast, or if you want to share it a different way, I want to bring that leadership to our community.
Well, what I think is very important to understand, and the process of having options is part of this understanding, is the human brain works in a certain way. And if you approach a customer looking or understanding the way the human brain works, as opposed to approaching a customer as a commodity or just a commission check, you're just going to be much more successful selling whatever you sell, whether it's loans or peanut butter. If you know how to approach a customer, how they're going to think, you're just going to be better. So, for example, rather than when you're in a pricing situation or a presentation situation of showing the customer something, the human brain loves options. They don't want to see just one option. However, they only want to see 3 options, 4 maximum. The human brain is very, very comfortable looking at options. So in a mortgage situation, I'm, to full disclosure, I'm not super familiar with the mortgage selling process. I'm going to get to know it a little better based on what you said. But let's say you're showing someone options of a 15-year loan, a 30-year loan, or whatever, adjustable rate, whatever it is. If they have 3 options in front of them, it no longer becomes, am I going to use this person as a loan officer? It becomes, which option am I going to use with this loan officer? That's a buying process. That's a buying decision rather than am I going to do it decision. So if you give someone 3 options of whatever they're looking at, the chances of them purchasing from you increase about 61%, simply because you're giving them the options, and the brain feels much more comfortable, not only that they have options, but you're giving them those options.
So guys, I hope that sinks in. If you just give a family options, you've improved your conversion or your chance of conversion by 61% from a brain science perspective.
From a brain science perspective, yeah, you can, if you sit there and you still smell like a salesperson, or they're not feeling like you care about them, then obviously that's going to go down. But so it all comes together. But if you can build that trust factor, and then you say, here are the options, rather than this is what I think you should do, here's the one option, you're just going to sell more, period.
Yeah. And to your point, guys, nothing is a magic pill. I mean, it's how you show up. It's how empathetic you are. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that you are an attractive, trustworthy person, but options is a tactic that you can control that will improve not only your conversion, but the value of the service that you give a family. So push to the Mortgage Coach community. When we roll out Mortgage Coach, often people look at it and they're like, oh, that's better. That's great. But loan officers are so trained, like they've spent their whole career, and I'm just going to show it on my screenshot real quick. You've been trained, your whole life to deliver this fee worksheet. Like, it's rate, payment, cash to close, and given options isn't natural. So, one of the things we do in the training process here at Mortgage Coach is like, hey, when you do purchases, it could be down payment options. It could be purchase price options. Like if they haven't found a home yet and you're showing them purchase price options. If you're quoting with a big bank or an online lender, we all know that they'll like always quote the lowest rate with the highest cost. And so maybe it's low rate, high cost, high rate, low cost. There's always options. So community, please let us know, what options are you quoting the most? If you're watching this in Facebook, put that in chat. Like, Dave, I'm always doing blank. Just give us a little quote in Facebook. What kind of options are you doing the most? Also, reminder, community, every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, we do black belt training. So we'll teach you how to be a black belt in mortgage advice, where we teach you, for every sales situation you get into, we'll teach you how to bring options into the conversation and how to use Mortgage Coach. So check that out. I'll put a link down below. So Allan, anything else on options before we go to another, call it key concept that you want to share?
Sure. Well, the other thing that options does, you have to understand, when customers don't want to meet with salespeople, period. There's been a lot of studies. I did my own study on it. I asked 236 people in a 2-week period in the same coffee shop. This is in my book. Everybody that walked in the coffee shop, I asked them, hey, can I ask you a question? And they said, sure. Same question. Do you like meeting with or talking with a salesperson? And all 236 people said no. Not even like, sometimes, maybe. Everybody was an emphatic no. And why is that? And it's because the perception of the salesperson over the years has been they're in it for themselves. They want the commission. They're not in it for the customer. So as soon as you can turn that around to a way where they feel that you're actually interested in them and caring about what they do, you then become like the anti-salesperson and the person they're not expecting, and doing stuff like showing options, which no other sales rep is doing, or some of the other things in my book. Once you start doing these things that appeals to the human behavior, you become that anti-salesperson. And you're like the godsend. You're like, we've all met that one sales rep that we all loved. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy was so great. He didn't rip me off. And then you refer him or her to everyone you know because it's an experience you weren't expecting.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that, Allan. And that is a bonus. I don't think you mentioned that story in the interview. So for anyone on the mortgage coach community, there's a lot of value in that. And we always talk about, like, if you want people to like you, you need to like them. Like, focus on liking people,
Mhm.
and you'll become more attractive to them. And then tactically give options. Now let's talk a little bit about story.
Mhm.
I don't know if you want to tell the same, thing you did on that podcast, but
Mhm.
I've just always been a big believer that if you can, in the sales process, go from I'm pitching you a proposal and here's the quote, and you can, like, tell a story, and you're really kind of vision casting the family, like, hey, this is what you told me your hopes and dreams goals were. And you're almost giving kind of like a story of, how you're going to achieve your goals with me. Like, you convert more. Now I know you,
Yes.
so talk about story selling a little bit, and let's anchor that into this conversation.
So I know exactly what you're talking about from the Donald Miller podcast, and it's such a great example of storytelling. I'll tell that in a second. But the reason why story is so popular, you can also integrate story with basically what I call social proof. Social proof is another way to really endear yourself to the customer. So, for example, if you're talking to a couple that has 3 kids and they're ready to buy a house, you simply can use social proof by saying, you know what, I sold a mortgage, or another couple with 3 kids purchased a mortgage or a loan from me 2 weeks ago, and it was this one. So this one was appealing to them. That's a social proof story. You tell a story about that family, and then the customer who's looking at that will feel more comfortable because, one, they've got the options. Two, someone else like them purchased that loan. So that's a way to use the story. But here's how powerful stories are. So there was a guy from the New York Times who was thinking about this. This is about 10 years ago, about is story really important enough when it comes to purchasing something? How important is it? So he went out and he went to a bunch of flea markets and yard sales, and he bought a bunch of meaningless things. Like, the one was like a ceramic horse head, one was an unopened jar of mayonnaise, like from a hotel, a lost hotel room key, all these weird things he bought for like a quarter from these yard sales, and he put them all on eBay. He put them all on eBay for the same price he paid, and not one of them sold. Nothing, because they were just junk. He then took them all down, and then he put them back on eBay, and he added a paragraph story to each one, giving each of the items a context. So, for example, he wrote a story of the lost hotel room key where there was, a guy having an affair with his secretary, and this where the hotel key, that's where it came from. Or the lost horse head was found in Ben Franklin's aunt's house, or something like that. I'm just making this up, but he put stories to them. He then put them back on eBay. You ready for this? He sold the most expensive one he sold was for $200 and something for the horse head. And the average price of these useless items was $57. So every piece of these little tiny useless pieces of junk, once they had a story attached to them, all sold for, you know, thousands of percentage more than what you paid for them. That's the power of story when you apply it to a product.
So guys, boom. I mean, this is huge. So first of all, thanks for the feedback, guys. John Smith just said, I tell stories so often, it's become a habit. And so John, you pick your habits pick you life. And dude, you picked a good habit.
That's
Like,
a good habit.
that's a good habit, dude. John also said, I offer 3 options: 1 point, half point, 0 points. So first of all, dude, thank you for the comment and for the engagement. John, or not John, but Josh said, KISS method. Keep it simple, not too many options, just enough to get the buy-in from the customer and not overwhelm them. So Josh, couldn't agree more. I always tell people too much information is just as damaging to the sales process as
They'll
too
shut
little
down.
information. Anything you want to add to that? Because that's such a good point. Like you want to give options, but it's got to be just the right option
really
so that you're not confusing them. Okay,
It's
three.
really three. Three is the sweet spot. The human brain loves the number three, loves three options. Three is everywhere in literature. It's everywhere in history. Three Musketeers, three everything. You can do four, but four then starts to get burning a little too many calories in the brain, as Donald Miller would say. Two is too little because it's only giving you one or A or B. You have to have that three option. And if you're in a, obviously for a mortgage, you probably can't do this, but many times if you're in control of the actual pricing of your product, you can then position the middle price to actually get the customer toward the larger purchase, which hopefully is the best purchase for them and the best purchase for the company. But
So
three, I would stay on three.
Okay, so you guys heard it. It's three, and you're right. Like two options, is kind of manipulative. I remember I had when I knew my kid was super smart. I remember what age she was. My daughter Sydney, and she wanted another ice cream cone. She just had ice cream. She wanted another one. She goes, "Can I have another one? Not two, just one." And I was just like, "Oh shit," like, oh, like not two, just one. It's like the answer was, do business with me. So two is not the answer. It's three. I like that. So let me do this. So by the way, that was a gift. Best practice, everybody. Three options with a total cost analysis. I want to get your opinion on a couple case studies.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the things we teach. Like every time you're doing a refi for someone, obviously do it in a mortgage coach, total cost analysis. Actually, this is the wrong one. Let me go back up to this one. Always put a video on it when you can, because it's like your personal voice.
Always.
We recommend say the family's name back to them. Say, what was the top goal that they told you so they know you heard them, and try to make that a goal beyond the transaction. Like, hey, you told me your goal was, smallest down payment because you wanted to have enough money to do blank, so like say a goal. And then like in the case of a refi, when you show those options, show one of them, here's your refi and your monthly payment, and show the other one, hey, if you took that savings, look at how much faster you could pay off your mortgage. And then we would tell them, like, if they were thinking about a 15-year loan, you might show that fourth that would be like refi, invest the difference, or hey, get a 15-year mortgage and be forced to do it. And that would be the fourth. What are your thoughts? Is that good leadership on our part?
Well, what I'm looking at here, the left is their current, that's what they're doing right now, correct?
Yeah, so current is their current mortgage. In the middle, it's refinance, and don't do, just refinance and save money. And then option two is, what if you took that savings and you prepaid your mortgage, and blow up the impact over time so that they can see that, wow, this refinance blows up over time.
Right. So, but their choice, you're just showing them, oh, okay. So if they just refinance and did nothing with the money, they'd still spend 30 years on the mortgage. But if they took the savings, they would pay it off in 20 years. So those are the two choices there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would definitely add a third choice of a 15-year option just to give them a third choice.
Got it. So mortgage coach community.
I would do that.
And I have a lot of examples of loan officers doing it. I just never, when I pointed them out, I didn't like, hey, science of selling, show one refi at one rate, show another either term difference or points difference, and then show. So like that. So here's another one I'd like your opinion on.
Before you go, can I make one suggestion, or I'm going to clarify something? If you go back to that picture there, what I would recommend.
Okay, I'm pulling it up.
Okay.
Okay.
A lot of times, and this is not just in the mortgage industry, this is in any industry, we get caught up in inside language. So we look at that right away and we're understanding, like if you pull it up with the explanation of the chart is on the left where it has what the loan amount is, what 360 is, all of those things are sort of inside language, and a customer can look at that and all of those numbers can get very overwhelming, even if they have the choices. If there's a way to simplify that to just the numbers they need to see, like what the payment is and what, like here, loan position, go back for that for 1 second, where it says loan position, all of those things, that's inside language. I have no idea as a homeowner or someone what any of that means. I know what loan amount means. I don't know what PIT is, reduction payment, all those things. You may, as a loan officer say, yeah, well, I know exactly what that is. That's kind of overwhelming to a customer, or it could be. So try to simplify that, or try to get rid of some lines that they don't need to see, because you don't want them to be overwhelmed as well. And when you have 3 choices, but the choices have a lot of different lines and numbers in them, it could get a little overwhelming. So my suggestion would be to simplify those columns so the layman, not the mortgage person, the layman really understands what they're looking at.
Yeah, and just to put a little more color on the process, so that, for compliance reasons, you can't change the name. So like there are, like you're quoting someone a loan, rate, payment, and there are compliance things that like they need to understand PITI. And you're right, they don't know it. So part of the educational process is, right now they just get a fee worksheet and there's no options. And it's almost like a compliance document that their proposal. And what we've done is we said, hey, you got to do this compliantly, and you got to do it so that when they get their disclosures, because they are going to get disclosures, it's important that they put it in that context. So one of the things you could do with Mortgage Coach is you can give them a guided tour. And we do recommend that, like walk them through it. And then that's why we put the video on it, because you can give some education with the video around it. So just FYI, some of that, how you quote rates and fees, and whenever you show rates, fees, and payments, there needs to be an APR. A lot of that is compliant. And loan officers, you got to be careful on this, guys, because if, a lot of your emails aren't compliant. So you've got to make sure that when you're quoting rates and fees, it's compliant and it's simple so that the family understands that. Just some nuances in the mortgage space.
Yeah. And again, if you're talking about there's an education period before that where they're understanding what those left columns mean, then it's a little easier. But a lot of numbers to people, it's just normal human brain stuff. Numbers overwhelm people. So, but it is what it is. So.
Well, that reminds me of another best practice, guys. When you're gonna give a presentation to a client, we recommend that you don't give them the link. And let's say you're going to be on Zoom with them and you're going to walk them through it, or you're going to be on a phone call and you're going to walk them through it. Give them the link as the phone starts, so that they don't click into this and they're like, "Oh, what is all this?"
Right?
Because you're right, and we teach like, "Hey, we're this beautiful piece of technology, and if it's used right, you put the right options in it, you deliver it the right way." We even find like, there's a big difference. Like some loan officers deliver the link and every single family opens it, or let's just say 98%. Right. And we have some new loan officers. It's like, hey, I gave them the link and no one opens it. Well, you didn't say the right thing so that they are going to open it. So you got to frame it. So really good points, man. I appreciate that. So we've only got a few minutes left. And I hope you'll do another interview with me.
I'd love to, absolutely.
Yeah, so Mortgage Coach community, if you have more science of selling questions for Allan, put them below. Allan, just so we get some cliff notes on your book, the 7 secrets. What are some of the secrets, and what do you think we should talk about next time we do an interview?
Well, the book is called The 7 Secrets to Selling More by Selling Less, and it's all about the foundation of the book is stop selling and start helping. If you lead from a position of helping, and that's your intention, you'll actually sell a lot more. The tagline I have on my LinkedIn profile is, you don't need a closing technique if your main intention is to help the customer. If your main intention is to sell the customer, that's when you need closing techniques. That's when you need objection handling techniques. That's when you become the typical salesperson that they're expecting, and you'll have a 30% close. If you actually lead with helping, you can double, sometimes triple that kind of closing percentage. So lead with helping, not with selling. Lead with the problem that you solve, not the product. If you can remember those 2 things, and then the book gets into the 7 ways you can actually do that, with body language, with pricing techniques, with social proof, with influence and persuasion, a lot of different things in the book. But it really oil boils down to that main concept of you're there to help the customer solve their problem and not sell them.
So if you don't mind, I want to show one more, because I really think this one takes story selling, it takes option selling, and then it really helps a family do something that they didn't even know they could do. So tell me what you think of this strategy. So in this particular strategy, it was a family that was saying, hey, we want to see if we should refinance. Current loan, option A. We could refinance and save $312 a month. Now, this is a family that had a new baby after going through COVID. They kind of were like, it'd be great to have another bedroom. And so they said, well, could we get a bigger house? And in this case, it was 525,000 was the right school district with the extra bedroom. And that the family would have had to pay, they qualified for 5% down. So non-contingent, they had the down payment, 5%, and they could buy it. Now their payment would go up $507. And Mortgage Coach helps them clearly see that. And now they had equity in this home. So they could buy the new home 5%, and then they could sell the old home and take the $125,000, buy down the loan amount, recast the monthly payment. So get the right payment with that $125,000 in their current home, and they could lower their payment by $164. Are you tracking me, Allan?
Yeah, and have a new house.
So check this out. The other thing that they could do, and this is one of the things that Mortgage Coach does, this is our platform, is they can say, well, hey, what if we took that 125 and we invested it with our financial planner? And in this particular case, the family said, hey, we're averaging 8, but let's put in 6% rate of return. And now what should we do? Well, the family, in this case, Allan, they said, we're clearly moving up and they said, and we actually can handle that extra $500 a month in payment. And what we're going to do is we're going to invest that money with our planner. And then over time, they got more liquid, they got more equity because they bought a bigger home, and they're getting appreciation rates on their 5%, and they got their dream home. What are your thoughts? In my opinion, good job of option selling, good job of leadership and advice. And now what we teach loan officers is not only did you create a great story for this family, but now in your social media marketing, you should be telling, this story and what we call story selling, creating content to story sell. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it seemed like it's a really good job of the option selling, because I liked what you did because a lot of times, or like many savvy people say, okay, well, if I'm going to put $125,000 on the house, am I going to get my return better than if I invest it? And that's exactly what you did. So you answered those questions. You gave that as an option. You actually then showed that option was the best one to choose. So you kind of guided them that way. However, since you had the options there, they didn't have to take the option. They could have said, well, I still want to do this and keep the 125,000, whatever. You gave them options, but it pointed them in the direction where it was best for them. So they still felt like they were in control. You felt like a teacher to them rather than a salesperson. And you can say, listen, you can choose any one of these 4 options. You can stay where you are. You can do these other 3. But I'm showing you this option here is going to be your best one if this is the one you want to go with. And then boom, it's up to them.
Yeah. So Mortgage Coach, to me, that is a story you should have. You should be talking about it on social media. You should be talking about it at lunch and learns with realtors. And you should be talking to families. Like right now, everybody wants to connect, reach out to people and hey, how are you digging your current home? What are your plans over the next year or two? So Allan, for anyone who wants to buy your book, learn more about you, what's the best place to learn more about you, to any training or coaching or workshops that you're doing? I want my community to know about. How can people reach out to you?
Yeah, I have a master course, a live sales master course coming up on February 16th. It's going to be 7 weeks. So once a week on a Tuesday, we're going to get together. I have a back end platform where it's going to be more of an accountability kind of sales. It's not just going to be 1 hour once a week and then you don't hear from me again. It's going to be a really in-depth 7-week process. To find out everything that I have, my website is is good right now, but it's being updated. So go to my Flow page. Flow page is like a link tree. So it's flow.page/Allan Langer, ALLANLANGER. It has every link to everything I have. It has my master course, my book, my web page, my LinkedIn, everything on there on that one page. So flow.page/Allan Langer.
All right, guys, we will get a link to that. If you're watching this in YouTube and you got value, like it, share it. And in the show notes down below, we'll have a link to Allan's page. Mortgage Coach community, if anybody reads the book, which I recommend that you do, I'm going to. If you do sign up for his training and you go through it, guys, let's mastermind about this. I want to hear what you took, because I just heard a 30-minute podcast and I'm like, oh my God, I hope this guy will take an interview with me because I want loan officers to hear this. I have a feeling there's more gold in Allan's book that's very specific to the mortgage industry and very specific to the mortgage coach community. So if you do go read his book, go through his program, share it in our Facebook group. Allan, I am pumped that we got to meet each other. I'm looking forward to the next call. And thanks for the time that you spent with me today.
If I say one more thing, if anybody mentions the mortgage coach for the class, I'll give you $100 off. So there's a little discount right there. So thanks, Dave, for having me on.
Thank you. Appreciate you, man. Virtual fist bump.
All right.
Take care, everybody. This call is a wrap.